So with the Reichstag fire, Hitler declares a state of emergency, that this could be the signal for a communist uprising. And there's a clause in the Constitution, again, he's the Chancellor of Germany, and there's a clause in the Constitution of Germany that gives temporary power in a state of emergency, temporary power to the Chancellor, and so he will assert this power here. And it's just temporary for 6 months. You know, what could, just enough to overcome the state of emergency. Well, Hitler's ready to go. So he's going to just take action here, a man of action. He's going to take over the federal governments. So he'll insert his Nazis, his supporters, into these federal posts at the federal level. And he'll announce an end to the right of privacy, so you can listen in and eavesdrop, and we're going to find these communist terrorists. So end of the right of privacy, end of the right of assembly. And then he goes after the Communist Party. He will have them outlawed. It is illegal now to be a communist. And again, the Communist Party is a pretty good-sized party. You know, 1 in 8 people, 12% of the population are communist, and they're now outlawed. You may not be a communist. You may not meet as a communist party. Any mention of communism could get you thrown in jail. And the result of this, there are elections that happen after this, and the Nazis will bring back 44%. So they're up now from 37 to 44. The Germans love this, a man of action taking the reins of government in a state of emergency. Well, he's not done yet. That was in February. And in March, he has something bigger planned. In March, he will announce his plans for an enabling act, an act of legislation, the enabling act. Now, to get this done, he needs an act of the Reichstag, a 2/3 vote. He needs 2/3 approval of the government to enable him to take power, full power, not just for 6 months. Well, to get the 2/3, that's 67%. He's got his Nazis up to 44%, and he'll combine with some other right-wing parties, German nationalist parties, to add another 8%, and then he will contact the Catholic Party, and they will support him. And again, as far as the Catholics go, you know, they're opposed to communism also, because communism's atheistic, and so he gets the support of the Catholic Party, and this gives him over the 67%. There are some other parties added to this to give him the 67%, and it passes the Enabling Act. The Reichstag passes the Enabling Act. What is this? Well, it gives Hitler all legislative power. He can make any laws that he wants. He doesn't need to pass it through the Reichstag. Any laws he wants made. And of course, his executive power as Chancellor. And this will be for 4 years. So for 4 years now, and Congress, the Reichstag has agreed to this, for 4 years he can do anything he wants. Well, he's ready to go. He has a plan. This is a man with a plan. So what's made him so successful getting here was he actually has a program. Well, first of all, after outlawing the Communist Party, now he goes after the Socialist Party. He doesn't outlaw them, but he's going to basically just remove them from any influence. And again, this is a pretty big party. That's 19%. That's 1 in 5 Germans is a socialist. How do you do it? How do you take power from the Socialist Party? Well, you forbid strikes. This is how the socialists were able to get their demands, was to shut down a factory. If you shut down a factory in the state of emergency now, that's an act of treason. So you'll be arrested if you try to strike. Well, who would lead the strikes? Union leaders. So he'll just arrest those union leaders. That'll stop them from any strikes from going on. So union leaders will be hauled off. So you've rounded up the communists. Now you're rounding up the socialist union leaders. And then he will announce that the government will run the economy. Everything will be done by government approval, all the prices set, all the manufacturing done, a government-controlled economy. And he is going to make it happen. He's going to dump money into the industry, dump money into big businesses to put people back to work. That's the idea, is in the state of emergency and this unemployment, dump money in the industry, put people back to work, get these unemployed people off the streets, make them happy, make the country working again, and it works. He is going to perform miracles here. The unemployment rate, when he takes over, 2.6 million men. And part of this will be, the idea is that men are put back to work. Women will be taken out of the workforce, be told to go and home and raise the kids. So 2.6 million men out of work, and then just within a few years, only 500,000. So he puts over 2 million men back to work within a short period of time. This is an economic miracle for Germany. In fact, he'll be Times Man of the Year during this period for the economic miracles he performs for Germany. Well, some of the programs include, one of the most famous ones is the Autobahns, these giant highway system, a federal highway system through Germany. They're called Autobahns. government paid for, and of course you need lots of workers to put these things down. So all the German cities will be connected by autobahns now. That provides work, it provides a boon to commerce. And of course on the streets you'll want people driving cars. So he will promote the Volkswagen. It's not his idea, but he will promote it. The Volkswagen, a car for the folk, the Volk or the folk. And now they have a wagon, an inexpensive car. You have a job now, you should put part of your pay toward owning a car. You can take the family out, you can drive to work, you can take the family out on the weekends. So it's a leisure thing. And promote the family idea. Well, looking at the national government, now that his programs are working, what does he do nationally? How do you take over a country? Well, of course, he's got his Nazis, his henchmen, ready to insert into certain posts. Nazis will take over the leading post nationally. And of course, you'll also have a national police force, the Gestapo, with absolute power. Power over, even within the Nazi party, they'll have power to make people disappear. A lot of these are former SS guys will now join the Gestapo. He will create new federal departments. When he runs into a department that won't budge and won't give him access, he'll just create a new federal department overlapping the old. And of course, if you're in the government already, you recognize that if there's an advantage to being a Nazi, if you want to keep your job, you should join the Nazi party. And you'll have a lot of people doing this, a lot of people who really aren't dedicated Nazis becoming Nazis just to keep their government job. And then he'll start working down to the state level, putting his Nazis into state positions. And then the other way is to make sure that all information is Nazi controlled. All the presses, all the publishing of newspapers and radio, all information controlled by the Nazi party. So all the Germans will hear is the good side of things, what the Nazis are doing for Germany, not the negative stuff. And then universities, the minds of young people will be controlled by Nazis. University professors will be retired if they don't join the Nazi party, if they don't lecture the way that Hitler wants. So the universities have become Nazi controlled. I want to mention one professor here who will be leaving. Albert Einstein, a Jewish professor, will be leaving at this time, getting out early. Others won't be so lucky. By July of 1934, there is only one legal party. And of course, there's no need for it anyway because the government controls everything. It's in a state of emergency. Hitler's Enabling Act, there's only one party, and there only needs to be one party. Here's a picture of the Gestapo. These evil-looking policemen, state policemen, secret policemen, make people disappear. Never heard from again. If you survived them, you certainly wouldn't tell stories about it. As far as society goes, how did the Nazis take over society? Well, on the right side, the Nazis draw people to them. On the right-hand side, all these conservatives will unite around them. And again, you have to keep in mind that the bad stuff hasn't happened yet. The really nasty stuff hasn't happened. And so here's a guy who's defending the country against communism. So this will unite the conservatives. He's calling for the glory of Germany, so it's hard to oppose that. And then he is going to ally with the Catholics. The Catholics were a center party, and he will attach to them. In fact, he will contact the Pope. His representatives will contact the Pope, and there will be a concordat, a peace agreement between the Nazis and the Catholics. And again, the bad stuff hasn't happened yet. And so at the Catholic Party, the Catholic Church, what they want out of this is to protect the Catholic Church. They want an agreement that he's going to protect Catholicism, and he'll agree to this in order to get that center support from the Catholics. As far as all professions, everyone belongs to an association, and you will find at your association meetings that the Nazis are there to watch over everything. And again, it's best to just become a Nazi. As far as the workers go, just your common everyday laborer, he's giving them what they want. He's injecting money into society. He's uniting them as a labor front. Again, this is National Socialism, so kind of pulling the rug out from the left-wing socialist and moving the labor front over to the right wing. And again, the question comes up of, did anybody ever say no? Well, certainly people did, but opposition is very difficult. Opposition of the Germans, most people who opposed him would just kind of keep their mouth shut. Again, he's performing an economic miracle. Things seem to be working really well, and so if you oppose him, it's best to just kind of step aside for a while. Maybe he'll fall. Maybe he won't last long. The strangest thing is the German army. Of all the Germans who eventually side with Hitler, the German army is the last group to move over. And you wouldn't expect that. And you know that you know that World War II is coming, so you suspect that Hitler, of course, he controls the army. He doesn't. The army is very conservative, and by conservative, I mean back to 1914 conservative. Hitler's turning the clock back to medieval times. The army wants to maybe refight World War I, but not back to medieval times. So they are conservative, but they're run by a nobility. These very elite men. The Treaty of Versailles cut the army down, leaving kind of an elite corps left, and these men are of noble status. And who's Hitler? Well, he'd been a corporal in the German army, and he's an Austrian even, so they don't really appreciate him. And the other question for them is about his own private army. Hitler has a private army. His SA, the Nazi SA, these Sturmabteilungen, these head beaters. You know, he's got his own slugs, thugs in the streets. Well, Hitler is going to make a decision that he needs the army support. Germans like the army, and he needs the armies to support him. And so on the night of June 30th, 1934, he is going to remove the SA. Well, how do you remove the SA? This is a lot of guys, 100,000 angry men maybe. Well, he's going to take away the leadership. He is going to, on this night, send the Gestapo out, and they're going to execute the leaders of the SA, just the few top officials, the night of the long knives, they call it, when Hitler is going to assassinate the leader of the SA, a guy named Röhm, and then other leading SA guys will be assassinated one night in their homes. And of course, Germany's shocked by this. We aren't shocked by it, but the Germans would have been shocked by this act of a chancellor massacring people. Here's a picture of him and Röhm. He and Röhm had been close. He'll accuse Röhm of planning a coup d'etat and also accuse him of homosexuality, which just wasn't allowed. And then here's a cartoon showing the dead bodies on the night of the long knives, and the SA now has been rendered defenseless. And he tells them, he will tell the SA, you have three choices. You can now join the workforce. People are going to work, and you need to get a job. Or you can join the army. He will announce that the army will be reconstituted, so you can join the real army. Or you can join the SS. This is where the SS is created, his Schutzstaffel, his private bodyguards, a much smaller organization initially of the best of the SA. The blonde-haired, blue-eyed, super dedicated guys can join the SS. Eventually the SS will grow bigger and bigger and bigger, but right now this is where the SS is created from the remnants, the best of the SA. So Ernst Röhm was the guy in charge of the SA who was killed. Death of Hindenburg occurs just after this series of events. Hitler couldn't have planned it any better. The death of Hindenburg occurs. The old man finally passes away, and he's given all the honors of a great war hero. But now Hitler is elected president, and he will take the title of Der Führer. He's not a noble, he's not a king, he's Der Führer, a fascist leader in the realm of Mussolini. He is now the Chancellor of Germany, he's now the President of Germany. And he kind of dresses down here to make sure you understand he's not a nobleman. He wears just a common soldier coat. And this is a pretty good catchphrase here. If you were looking for understanding the Nazis in one catchphrase, Ein Volk, ein Reich, ein Führer. Ein Volk, one people. This is a racial thing of the German people united by blood. Ein Reich, they're doing something new. This Third Reich is new. Behind one man, the Führer, the man with the vision. You give up your rights, because Hitler knows the correct direction to direct Germany. It's not democracy. It's following one man. Now that he's president, the German army steps in line. And when you join the German army, you swear an oath to the president. It's not just a normal oath. You swear an oath to the death. And now Hitler's the president of Germany, so they swear an oath to Hitler to the death. Well, one thing we're kind of leaving out here as he's taking over is his attacks on the Jews. This is almost kind of a distraction. It almost seems kind of like a side note to everything. And they've talked about it. It's mentioned occasionally. It's been mentioned much earlier in the 20s, but now they kind of mention it a little bit of protecting the German race, this Ein Volk idea. We've got to protect the race. And so the anti-Semitism laws, he starts slowly with them and then builds them up gradually as he starts gaining more power, and there's no opposition, much to speak of. These anti-Semitic laws against the Jews. Well, looking at the Jews themselves, it's a tiny minority. They're only 1% of the population, 500,000 Jews in Germany. Well, let's start slowly. First thing, as we're putting people back to work, Jews will be out of government service. So as we're creating jobs, the Jews will be not allowed to serve in the government. That'll provide more jobs for Germans. And then excluding them from associations. When everyone's having their professional meetings, Jews are not allowed there. And then finally, by 1935, he's ready for his big whole slate of laws. They're called the Nuremberg laws. Nuremberg is a German city, a very ancient medieval city, and that's where the Nazis held rallies. There's a stadium there, it's still there today, where they hold these giant rallies. During the day, they've got their flags out, and then at night, they all have torches and sing songs. It's Germans who were there just described it as very moving, dedicating yourself to Germany and dedicating yourself to Hitler to the death. Well, here come the Nuremberg laws, announced at one of these Nuremberg rallies against the Jews, a whole slate of new laws. Well, Jews are not citizens. They lose their citizenship. In other words, there are Germans and there are Jews, and Jews cannot be Germans. They lose their citizenship. And then he forbids sex. This is part of that idea that they're infiltrating the blood. So no sex or no marriage. A Jew cannot marry a non-Jew or have sex even. They cannot employ non-Jews. In other words, a Christian Jew, a Christian German cannot work for a Jew. And then the Jews have to wear Stars of David. They have to wear this yellow patch whenever they go out in public to identify them as a Jew. So the police, carrying your passport on your chest. And then, of course, this is another law that they cannot live anywhere but the ghetto. There's these old districts. The Jews have to go back and live in the ghettos. Some of them had moved out. Well, what these laws are, Hitler will say, is there's nothing new here. As they turn back the clock, this goes back to the Middle Ages. These were Middle Age laws. Of course, now you're adding systematic government terror, pogroms, systematic government terror as they reinstitute these ancient medieval laws into the 20th century. So here's some pictures. Here's a Jewish family walking the streets with their stars on. And then lots of boycotts. The Jewish shops not in the ghetto will be boycotted, trying to turn the Jews back to the ghetto. Here's a sign out front saying, Germans, guard yourselves. Don't buy from Jews. There's a Star of David on the window to identify this as a Jewish shop. And there's a policeman out front, ostensibly to protect the shop, also to make sure that you don't go in if you're a German. Well, let's look at the German Jews. It's quite fascinating to see this tiny minority. Why did Germans turn against them like this? Why does Hitler hate them so? Well, looking at German Jews, they tend to be into retail and clothing. This goes back to medieval times again, because they were forced into these professions, and so that's what they've done for hundreds of years, and they're good at it. But then look at their other professions. Of all the banks in Germany, 17% of the banks are owned by Jews. A 1% minority owning 17% of the banking. And again, we're talking about small private banks here. As far as lawyers go, 16% of all the lawyers of Germany are Jewish. They cannot reach the level of judge, though. Of all the doctors, 10% of the doctors, 1 in 10 doctors is Jewish. They're not allowed to be in hospitals. This would be a private practice. They did house calls back then, so you would call a Jewish doctor to come to your house. Very few university professors. Again, I mentioned Einstein. Very few university professors. And then you wouldn't see them if you were a German Christian because they live in the ghetto. There's lots of poor Jews. But that's not what Hitler's going to focus on. Hitler's going to focus on these Jews here, the ones that are out in society and way beyond the 1% representation, a 1% minority heavily represented in these professions. And of course, if you want to show a conspiracy, you would show this, that these are conspiring, taking jobs away from German Christians. That's his hatred. He'll post these signs around. These are some famous signs all over Germany showing you how if you marry a Jew or have sex with a Jew, how it takes away from the German purity. It's called these purity laws, trying to stop you from having sex with Jews or marrying Jews. Again, showing the same thing, how you can make your family impure if you have Jewish blood. And then finally, the real attack on the Jews. By 1937, 1938, they become the violence. Lots of more boycotts, stopping, just shutting down Jewish businesses outside the ghetto. No government contracts, no government money going to Jews. Their property has to be registered. The Jews have to come in and register all their property, and they cannot sell it. And of course, we know where this is heading. It's so diabolical and so evil when you see it that he's planning on taking their property from them. He's planning on killing them. And then ID cards. The Jews have to have not just their Star of David on them, but they have to carry a certain ID card. And then any Jewish babies have to have Jewish names. They cannot have other names that must be identified as a Jewish baby. And any doctors now, they cannot go out to German clients. Germans must have German doctors. So that shuts down any doctors going around. And again, this is all part of a conspiracy, Hitler's conspiracy theory that the Jews are trying to invade the German and trying to ruin them. As far as immigration, the question comes up, why didn't Jews just leave? And they do. The immigration out of Germany, out of 500,000 Jews, about 120,000 of them will get out. And these will be the wealthier Jews, the ones who can find work somewhere else and have the funds to get out of Germany. But a lot of them are poor and can't leave or won't leave. And, this isn't the first time that there have been attacks on Jews. All through their history, they might have been attacked. And so, again, the thought that Hitler's not going to last long. You just live in the ghetto, stay in, close your shutters, just live in your little insulated community, and this will all pass. And it doesn't. But we know that, and they didn't. So, historians have tried to find a correlation between Hitler's attacks on the Jews and foreign policy. And he seems to have paired these things up, that as he's doing something in foreign policy, creating a lot of pressure, he seems to also attack the Jews. So kind of a double-edged thing. And then finally, Hitler, all these anti-Jewish laws will culminate in November of 1938. On one night, the Jews are going to be attacked all over Germany. This will be Nazi-organized attacks, pogroms all over Germany on one night, organized by Hermann Goering. This is his baby. One night. Nazis will scatter out and head toward the ghettos and attack the Jews on one night. It's called the Night of Broken Glass because they go through the Jewish ghettos and the Jewish businesses busting out the glass. In Germans call it the Kristallnacht because of all the shiny glass all over the streets in the morning. Here they are, the events in the morning. This is what the Germans will see in the morning, is the attacks on the ghettos. Here's some statistics for you, though. The statistics tell you a little bit more about Kristallnacht. As the Nazis go through these neighborhoods and burn out Jewish businesses and vandalize others, they will burn synagogues. All the synagogues all over Germany, many of them will be burned. 91 Jews are killed that night. So it's not just vandalism. 91 Jews are taken out and murdered. And then 20,000 more will be hauled away in trucks. So there's truckloads involved in this, taking the Jews away. Again, these aren't the first people that the Nazis have taken away. They've taken away the communists, they've taken away the socialists, and now they're hauling away the Jews by the thousands, taking them away to these concentration camps. And the Nazis will call them work camps. The implication here is that the Jews are lazy. We're going to make these Jews work now. So they call them work camps. Above the top of the work camp, there'll be that infamous phrase the Nazis will have, Arbeit macht frei. Work will set you free. In other words, you're here because you're lazy and don't work. It's really quite sad. The Jews are very industrious people. The world reaction. The world does react finally to Kristallnacht. And the world's reaction is a slight boycott against Germany. Nothing too serious, but the world did recognize that Hitler was attacking a minority. As we go into the spring of 1939, now you know that war is coming. Hitler will invade Poland in September of 1939. Hitler's actually ready for World War II now, and he does give a speech. If you're trying to find evidence, did Hitler ever intend to kill the Jews? There's no documentation of it, but there is a speech he gave in the Reichstag where he said this. It's pretty clear what his intention is. If the international Jewish finance, and again, international Jewish finance, a conspiracy, inside and outside of Europe, it's a world conspiracy, succeeds in involving the nations in another war. In other words, Jews cause World War I and Jews are causing another war. The result